seated. Honourable members, the Secretary will read the second order of the day.
Reply by the Premier to the debate on the Premier's opening address.
Thank you very much. I will now afford the Premier an opportunity to reply to the debate. Honourable Premier, I recognise you.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Thank you very much to all of the members who took part in the debate today. Much appreciated. Copious notes have been taken from all of the inputs. Before I deal with the Leader of the Opposition, I'm going to start with the very last speaker. I was tempted to say what he said, but can I say to the Honourable Minister Mackenzie, thank you very much for your sweep. It was a great sweep. It really was. It hit the nerve where it needed to. But Speaker, thank you very much, and to the Leader of the Opposition, thank you very much. You obviously have a serious role to play, and I like the way that you are saying that not only in your position as Leader of the Opposition from a single political party, but also how you will bring the opposition together, and I really like what you're saying there. I would like to just address you on your first point, which says lack of a clear plan of action, and perhaps also just add to that the end-of-term report, which is raised by some other members as well. And so it is online for everybody, but we'll get it circulated to you so you could quickly go through the high-level report. And some members said, jeepers, we were bragging yesterday, wait until you read this report, because you obviously haven't read it yet. But can I say to you that, and refer you to not only this report, I'll refer you to the Growth for Jobs plan. I refer you to the safety plan, which I will speak about in depth today. I will refer you to any of the good governance plans and outcomes. I will also refer you to the process called a PSP, a Provincial Strategic Plan, by law, which we put in place, which is the plan for the next 5 years. And as I said yesterday, that plan has to be formulated before the medium-term budget policy statement around October. And of course, that plan also has to link to the national plan. Now, the draft national plan was tabled at the Lekgotla. They don't call it a strategic plan anymore. In other words, a MTSP. It's now called the MTDP. The President has changed the name. It's now called the Medium-Term Development Plan. And that draft has been tabled. I'll actually try and find out if we can, I'm not sure if we could circulate that draft to members, because it is a draft plan. And of course, National Cabinet documents are secret. But it really does outline a plan, and I can say that most of that plan we fully agree with. But as a province, we've also got agreement through the Minister in the Presidency for Monitoring and Evaluation, Minister Rawagopa M, that we will submit in writing anything that we want to bring about as a change or as an objection to anything in that plan. And of course, that will also formulate not only the national plan, but our plan over the next few months. I want to assure the Leader of the Opposition that you spoke about the Geef Juster Hospital, and I want to assure you, well, we call it the Klipfontein Hospital, that work has already started. Money is already appropriated for it. Those processes are already ongoing. But we have a much bigger plan for hospitals in the province. I think it's been announced already. You are aware of the World Bank enabling us for a massive PPP project. This is the total rebuild of the Tygerberg Hospital, and also work being done on the Belhar Hospital as well. So I can assure you that that is going to be a major focus in this term. I would also like to, and you have raised it, a number of other members have raised the racism issues that are being faced specifically at the moment in our province in 2 schools, but in general, racism, and it must be dealt with decisively. Absolutely. It is absolutely unacceptable if racism is used in this day and age. We must also, any form of discrimination, we have to make sure that we deal with it decisively. And as I said yesterday in this House, our behavior, our rhetoric, how we behave as public representatives, how we take these stories forward, we must make sure that we have all the facts every single time. And we must also know that in our positions, that it is our duty to hold this space for difficult conversations, not further inflame them or create anxiety for our residents. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I am aware of the concerning and serious allegations at 2 of our schools. And these are currently being investigated, and extra support is being provided to the learners at these schools. I appeal to politicians, activists, and the media to remember that there are children involved, and to behave ethically and allow due process to be followed. Our priority must be in the best interests of our children and not personal interests in gaining media attention. Remember that learners, young learners, are being victimized and picked on at the moment, and we've got to make sure that we protect them at all costs. That is a bare minimum that we, as public representatives, need to take control of. Speaker, I also want to say that I agree with him. We have to reduce informal settlements. We must. We cannot. And it's a question that I ask. In 2030, in 2050, will we have more shacks or less shacks in our country and in our province? We have to make sure that we have less. We've got to put plans in place, come up with ideas of how we decrease the number of shacks. How we, as the Minister said in his input, Minister Simmers, how we really start to densify, massify, go up. We've got to produce more square meters to enable the reduction in informal settlements. So I absolutely support him in that. And perhaps referring back to where he said he wants to bring policy proposals and even legislative proposals, I would absolutely welcome that. We really need to, as every party represented here, we must not only just come here and say this is what's wrong. We really would like to see other alternative policy proposals being put on the table, and I can assure you we will take those policy proposals forward. The Honourable Said also spoke about high tariffs. And specifically, if I think about high tariffs, I think about how electricity tariffs are hitting our citizens very hard. But I hope that I am going to get the support of the full opposition here to put pressure against the new proposed tariffs of NERSA. Can you believe NERSA's new proposed tariffs is a rise of 36.15%? 36% increase in the cost of electricity. How on earth? So I sincerely hope that you will support us in making sure that we absolutely object to that. We absolutely, and then of course, this is the increase that's being asked for by Eskom, but at the same time, they can't even always guarantee that we have power in our country. But perhaps, and I hear the comments about the city of Cape Town, so let's actually talk about that, because I've got here the cost of electricity for Lifeline customers, and this year measures cities across South Africa. And if you take all the cities across South Africa, their increase,
Order.
Their increase 22-23 to 23-24.
Order.
Thank you, Speaker. Their increase across is increased by 15.1%, and Cape Town's actually got a minus 5.1% decrease in costs. So if you look at the actuals, right now on 450 units of Lifeline electricity, if you were in the city of Durban, and you would pay for those 450, 1,336 rand. I'm getting
Order,
to the
members.
citizens of Cape Town. I'm getting to the cost. Just hang on. So I'll say that again, Speaker. 1,336 rand in Durban. In Johannesburg, it's 1,151 rand for the same 450 units of electricity. In Cape Town,
Order.
in Cape Town,
Premier, please take your seat. Honourable Nkondlo. You've had an opportunity to participate in the debate, if you so wished. The speakers list was not determined by the speaker. I'm saying that the mechanism was presented to you as a member. Your party chose not to put you onto the speakers list, but that doesn't mean that you have an opportunity now to engage the Premier. Honourable members, you had the same privileges this morning. Allow the Premier to reply to those inputs made. If there's any other comments you want to make afterwards, there will be other opportunities and other mechanisms at your disposal. Honourable Premier, my apologies, you may continue.
Thank you. Maybe I was purposely being disrupted so that I couldn't get that number out. So maybe I'll start again. That the city of Cape Town has the lowest lifeline tariff of all South African cities. It is the only city to actually reduce the price of subsidized electricity for the poor, provides a bigger cross-subsidy this year to help those who need it most. So Durban's 1,336, Johannesburg's 1,151, and Cape Town is 899. Then to the Honourable Said, I agree with him on extortion. And I mean, extortion, we've seen what's done to and it's been spoken about, Manenberg School of Skills. We've seen what's happening in housing projects. We've seen what's happening in roads projects. We've seen it happening, and it's happening across South Africa, and it is happening across this province. And it is a huge, huge problem. There is a team put together on it, but I must also say, and I've just spoken about Cape Town, I think they as a city have also ramped up a lot more now to deal with extortion. We've got the extortion hotline that's now been launched, but I absolutely agree with him. And we need to make sure that we get more and more resources to our police service and our investigations so that we can deal with this decisively. Minister Becky Cele announced the special committee on extortion, and it took a long time to get up and running. That is now running, and we've got to make sure that we deal with it. You know, I went to visit some of the SMMEs, the small businesses that get support through the Booster Fund. And I was visiting with a lady who has a number of small beauty salons in Khayelitsha. And the Booster Fund not only comes with money, but it also, because of the way it's dealt with now through the Sululu Foundation and other really amazing entrepreneurs that help entrepreneurs with the funding and also other business practices and identifying what's most needed. In this business, she had too many outlets and didn't have enough systems in place to control them. And so brought the outlets down from about 50 to 21. Now suddenly those 21 businesses are making a profit. And it's really good news. I mean, this lady's business turns over in beauty salons in Khayelitsha R1 million a month. But you know, she said to me, she pays 2 different organizations extortion money. So I said, I need the details. And she said, I can't give you that detail because they will shoot out in front of my shop and drive my customers away. That's how much fear is instilled by these horrendous criminals. And so extortion is a massive issue. And we definitely have to deal with it decisively. And I hope the leader of the opposition does support us in that. And maybe that's a space that we say, well, when we, as we agreed, how do we bring you into these conversations? And when Minister Mchunu comes down, we need to create that space to say, let's have this discussion. Let's ramp up dealing with extortion, because it is something that is killing so many of our businesses and destroying so many opportunities for people across our province. I've already said to you, policy proposals and bringing legislation, absolutely would welcome that, and in any way support you in that, because that's really what we want. Let's create a space of ideas, a space of interest in developing new policies for bringing change for the citizens. Perhaps the last thing that I'd like to say, or second last thing, I know that you spoke about the soccer field or the investment, international investment on school property. I believe it only came in June. They are busy assessing it, but if we can help in any way, of course, we must facilitate investment to help, and especially if it can help with sporting facilities in and around a school that really will help us fight crime as well, because it gives people much more meaning, especially after school activities, etc. And then the last point, thank you very much. You said you're going out with Gift of the Givers. They are an amazing organization. There's a number of really amazing organizations that step up every single time we have disasters in our province. I just want to say that I hope you're going as the leader of the opposition and not as party political, because that would be wrong. They help our government a lot, and we need to keep politics out of it, but we all need to make sure that we support these organizations, because they are amazing organizations. Speaker, moving on to Member van Minnen, thank you very much, and of course the new chair of the Premier's Department and Oversight, so congratulations on that appointment, and I look forward to working with you, and I'm sure that you are going to also be pretty strong in your oversight, so I look forward to that too. You spoke definitely about plans for the future, especially around the impact of floods and climate change, and and I kind of talk about it in some of the other replies. But Speaker, it's not as if, and I asked yesterday that we've got to really start thinking and investing differently because of climate change, but it's not as if it hasn't been done before. I think about the Ashton Bridge and the design around the Ashton Bridge, and that was specifically done in a way to say, we've had this bridge wash away before, we do not want to have it wash away again, and it stood the test. And it was interesting to see how that water came right up to the bottom of that bridge, but it didn't wash away, because the bridge is designed that it doesn't have any pylons underneath. It doesn't create space for the trees to build up and wash the bridge away. It allows for the flood waters to disperse. And the reason that that's in place is because we talk about future planning, but especially the Department of Infrastructure has for many years been working very closely with the futures teams in our universities. And that's how these plans come to being. Or whether it's an Ashton Bridge or some of the new roads that we've built over the last few years, to see how they, sustain floods. They get covered in boulders and mud and things, but the whole road doesn't really wash away, and that leads to now the work that's being done, or that needs to be done in Citrusdal. And of course, the team is already working on it. We already know it's a massive budget to actually replace that whole road, but it is about planning for the future, working with the future on how we deliver, but it's also about how we understand that, as Minister Bradell says, the future means we're going to have so many more litres per person per day in water. We need to have so many more schools, so many more hospitals. Futures and future thinking definitely has to be something that we continue to do, but actually do at a higher level. The Honourable Van Wyk, thank you very much, and again, your maiden speech, and welcome to this House. Spent quite a lot of time talking about your new portfolio of education, and especially highlighting the shortfalls. And this is something that not only this side of the House, we've said we need to fight for more money and our fair share of money. I hope the whole House starts to fight for the fair share of money, because it's for every citizen in this province. But thank you very much. I also want to say that I think we've done very well with not only our own schools, but the private schools, the collaboration schools, new ways of education, and I think that's something we've got to embrace even more as we move forward. To the Honourable Petrus, thank you very much, and also welcome to this House, speaking a lot about specifically someone coming from George, the George building collapse. And of course, not only you, a number of other members raised this issue, and you called for a commission of inquiry. Now, I'm going to say to you that if the investigations that are underway at the moment are not satisfactory, then I will call for a commission of inquiry. I do have that power within the Constitution. But I first must give the South African Police Services the space to do and complete their investigation. We are still waiting for that investigation. I must give the Department of Labour their space to finish their investigation. They actually have a very serious role to play in this space of making sure that the rules are adhered to, especially on building sites, etc. We also know that I've asked this province, and specifically the Department of Infrastructure, to do another investigation. I wasn't just going to leave it up to the police or to the Department of Labour. I said, let's also do one. Let's see exactly why this happened. So what I can tell you is, actually last week, the preliminary report has been received by the department. They are busy working through that report, and they will bring it more than likely to our next cabinet meeting. That surely would help us on the way to say we've got sufficient to lay charges, to do whatever we need to do, because as I said yesterday, those who are complicit in the cause of this devastating collapse need to be brought to book. They need to be held to account. Then I'd also like to say that as we stand here today, our social workers are still working with those families, supporting those families. They have been from the very beginning. A lot of the George community themselves stepped up and are still involved. I know that the Rotary Club is still involved specifically in helping many of those victims of this collapse. And so we will continue to make sure that that support is there because, obviously it is imperative and a must. But thank you very much for your input. To the Honourable Kasim, thank you very much. I have specifically handed this out for you because of, I think, some of your comments that you made. You obviously said no report on the last term. You know that last term you were here. There would have been the midterm report, and I hope you did read that, and then you could have read this report as well, because that would have given you the report on the last term, so you don't have to say no report on the last term. There is a report, and it's also online, so you can go and draw it down there as well. I would also like to say that I'm going to talk a little bit more on the safety plan, because you also raise issues on the safety plan. A lot of people get stuck on one component of the safety plan called the LEAP officers, and we'll talk about that. But you also need to engage a lot more on the violence prevention plan and the violence prevention unit that's now been established and the programs across different departments that are involved in violence prevention. Because in actual fact, that's the real work that's got to happen. You cannot police your way out of a murder rate that we have, in whichever way policing is done, at national level as it is now, and what we would like to see differently in the pilot projects that we run to try to influence national policy. But I think that would be a good idea to go and have a look at those issues. I would also like to say, I think the Honourable Mackenzie has already said it, but I don't think you were in-house when he said it. Please go to Grabo and go and have a look. It does operate 24/7. Then you raise the issue of Blue Dot. So let me say again, the Blue Dot pilot that we ran was an outstanding pilot. It really was a great piece of work. It was good, innovative plans that were put in place to try something else to enable the taxi industry, which is a major contributor to the movement of people. In actual fact, with the collapse and failure of PRASA, the taxi industry moves so many more, well, they move the most people in our city, but in all cities and in all towns across our province and South Africa. We obviously in that pilot took millions and millions of rands, put it into a pilot, took data and evidence, and worked with the taxi industry, and we ran a pilot on 1,000 taxis. Everybody says, roll it out to all 16,000 taxis. I'd love to. But the only way we can do this is if it can be a national project. Because it cannot be funded. You cannot fund 16,000 taxis with a Blue Dot program. It is just not affordable for a province to do that. But why we ran the project and why we ran the pilot was to show South Africa that you can actually make a difference. And the industry really loved the project. They welcomed the project. So, if you like the project as much, please let's support this project at a national level, bring it in at your national, you've got members at national parliament, table it at national, put a motion, yeah, or ask Ricardo to write a letter for you. Then, Honourable Member, you raise Robbie Newrock. You obviously weren't listening in this House. You were in this House last term, and you weren't listening in this House. You must listen. You must read the reports. Because we said, let's build a homeless shelter in the Robbie Newrock building. An old hospital that is not used. It made a lot of sense. And we put 8.1 million rand to the project. The problem is, when we went in to go and actually rejig this building, asbestos was discovered throughout the building. And it's going to cost more than 25 million rand just to redo the building from an asbestos point of view. So, as we said in the last term, when Robbie Newrock was brought up, we said, and Robbie Newrock plan of 8.1 million was to put 120 homeless shelter beds in place. We could not afford the 21 or 25 million for the building's asbestos removal, so we went to our NGO partners, and the 8.1 million rand was then distributed amongst our NGO partners, and we put an extra, not 120 beds in place.
Order.
Not 120 beds in place, 186 beds in place. I don't know if I must repeat that again. 186 beds in place, Mr. Speaker. And then what we did as well is we added another 6.5 million rand that is going to the Haven shelter, and that is specifically to build extra capacity for families who are on the street. So it might not just be a man or a woman, now that families can be looked after together. And you would have noticed that also in the city they've just opened a new street shelter, and that also has beds, but that it also has family units as well. To the Honourable Jacobs, thank you very much, and welcome to this Parliament. Thank you very much for your contribution. But listening to you, obviously, you get elected, you play a part here, but you obviously are very much a nationalist party. And of course, we really fought nationalism in our country a long time ago, and we don't need to go back there, but obviously you must be here and represent and what you get voted for, and of course that's your seat. But I did go to have a quick look at your manifesto, but I just want to tell you that the link is down, so you might want to put the link back up again. So I couldn't really have a look at your manifesto to see what it said, because in this House we need to bring issues to the table as well, and I look forward to those inputs from your party, because if you've got ideas and plans, let's look at them. And I think I won't go any further. I think Ricardo Mackenzie did also answer a number of the other issues that you raised. Minister Bradell, thank you very much for your input. I'm going to highlight one or two things. You spoke about drift sands, and I think I want to say it again here today. Drift sands, obviously during the pandemic, we had a number of areas that were invaded, and of course during the pandemic there was a moratorium. No one could be removed. The big risk in drift sands, as you said, it is a retention dam. It is a dam that is supposed to fill up with water, and people have actually built homes in the dam wall. It is a high-risk area. We've brought in the Human Rights Commission. You personally have walked with Commissioner Nissen. We've gone to every household, issued them with letters. We have really worked very hard to point out to those citizens that they are highly at risk. And of course, this was a nature reserve. We've deproclaimed that nature reserve. We've taken areas in that nature reserve that's higher off the floodplain and created that space, so at least there's formal space for people to move to. But it is still an issue, and I think in this case that perhaps we also need to get multi-party buy-in to say, citizens, please, you are at risk here. Let's try and find a way to actually move you away from that risk. Because it is going to be the worst thing ever if that dam wall breaks, because then not just hundreds but thousands of people are going to be affected. And I'm pretty certain then we're going to have high death rates because mass movement of water and mud, etc. Like we saw in KZN, it really is devastating. So it is a big issue. We've spoken to these individuals, and we must make sure that together we move them. Then, can I also say that you spoke about the work with the Cocta Minister, and of course I was part of that initial meeting when he came down, and we've got to keep on working in the MOU between provinces. Although I am actually quite proud of the work that your team does with provinces anyway. I spoke about the floods in KZN. I mean, I'll never forget that devastating flood that they had, but when the Premier was standing there being interviewed, there was Colin Diner standing next to him because he'd moved in to come and help. And we really do that. We go out of our way to go and help in other provinces, and vice versa. And we need to do more. And I think this agreement or building an MOU between provinces is a really good idea. You also spoke about citrus dole. And citrus dole, I see that, I mean, I can't remember the number exactly, probably nearly 300 million rand now is the current damage to infrastructure. A meeting last Monday, another 15 million rand was made available specifically to the agricultural sector to try and remove further barriers, because it's going to rain again this season, let alone next season, and we better protect ourselves as much as we can, because we can't keep building infrastructure. And then, of course, we fix and open the road, but then we've got to plan for what is the future, and then we've got to try and draw down money for investment there. Honourable Member Masipa, thank you very much for your contribution. And perhaps, I know it was your maiden speech, but you did bring in some issues that maybe were not so maiden speeches, like VBS and Nkandla. But of course, you were saying that it's not in this province, and I'm glad it's not in this province. But you spent some time on the Clan William Dam. And it is a travesty that we haven't had that dam built yet. Speaker, you know, and you spoke about the initial planning and initial budget in 2007 and the big launch in 2008 with the big tent and the spade and invite all the people. And I think we've had 5 of those launches since 2008. They always seem to coincide with election time, which is quite interesting. But we still don't have the dam wall broken. Our side of the bargain's all been done. The road's been moved. I mean, everything's changed, all the other stuff that has to happen, but the actual construction of the dam. Now we've been told it is happening at much higher cost, but we need it to happen. If it's not going to happen, then I agree with what Minister Burdell says. Then we need to go to National and say, Minister Simmers and the DOI will build this facility. We will manage it. We will do it. And so I think that's a must. But, Honourable Member, there's one thing that you miss, which is even more critical. I mean, we want the extra water capacity. We want the water capacity for the region itself, but we also need that water capacity downriver to all of those towns downriver from this dam. But the big issue in this dam is not the capacity of water. The big issue is the integrity of the dam wall. Because that's why the study was done. That dam wall, the integrity is a problem. And it's moving. The dam moves millimeters every single year. And the engineers were saying we have to redo this wall. And that's actually what we have to get right. So we cannot allow this to go year after year, because we have to mitigate that risk. And every year that goes past that we don't build it, we will up the risk on. And imagine if that dam wall had to break, all of those towns downriver are all hugely at risk. So that is really the critical thing we've got to get right. You spoke about AGOA, and absolutely, in actual fact, yesterday I was engaging with the Deputy Minister who's just come back, along with Minister Parks-Tau. It sounds like there were some very good meetings in the US, and it was nice interacting and understanding what the update was, because, of course, you know, this province played a strong role last year in really invigorating our national government to get a goer going and back on the books. And then the last point is foot and mouth, and that is a serious issue that is being faced by the agricultural sector in the Eastern Cape. It is devastating businesses there at the moment, and we have to make sure that it is managed, it is quarantined, and it does not spread to other parts of our country, and specifically not to this province. And as you said, both our Minister of Mobility and our Minister of Agriculture have been actively involved in making sure that we are protecting this province, making sure that we are mitigating wherever that risk raises its head. Welcome to this House, member. I must say that I had a kind of feeling that we were taken back to 1917 in Red Square when you started speaking. And you know that, I'm sorry to say, but those policies have all failed. They've failed around the world. And of course, you've also failed within the ANC alliance, because those policies are not the policies of the ANC alliance. In actual fact, if you listened to the President's speech in the House, in the National Assembly just 2 weeks ago, you wouldn't have heard any of those policies in that speech, because we see that they don't work. You know that you spoke about the widening gap. That's called the Gini coefficient. And I would ask you to go and read up on the Gini coefficient. Go and have a look at the Stats SA report on the Gini coefficient. If you go and have a look in 2016, the Gini coefficient measurement, and have a look at it every single year. So in South Africa, the Gini coefficient was 0.67 in 2016. And then so you go 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022. Guess what? The national Gini coefficient still at 0.67. In this province, we were lower. We were 0.60. Of course, 0.60 is still way too high. Even where we are now at 0.59 is still way too high. Obviously, it's way too high. But it is reducing in this province. If you look at our documents, you will see that every single year in all of our municipalities, it reduces slightly, but it reduces where it doesn't reduce anywhere else. And that is the policy differential. Because the policies that you speak about, tell me how they're going in the other provinces where you are in government. Tell me how those policies are making a difference. I will talk just now on jobs across South Africa, as raised by other members. I will talk about jobs and the difference that a job makes. It reduces poverty. It reduces the Gini coefficient. I will talk also about the 74%. I'll talk about that just now, and the number of households. Also by Stats SA, not controlled by this province. So quite frankly, Honourable Member, those policies are dismal failures, and I don't think that that kind of policy is something that we will take forward in this House. The Honourable Constable, thank you very much. You first spoke about the DDM model. Now, we have a different model in this province, and it's based on the Constitution and it's based on the rule of law. Because, and I've written a number of letters to the President, and in actual fact, we've just written to the President again and to SALGA again. I had a discussion with the President of SALGA on this, and he goes, yes, we better have a discussion on this. Because the DDM model, which we've now got some legislation, which basically says that a national minister can come in and usurp the power of a district mayor or a municipal mayor. That is unconstitutional. You can't do that. The second thing is, how do you hold that minister accountable for what happens in that municipality? There's no mechanism to hold them accountable. Our model is not about sending power from national into a municipality. It is about saying, how do we support this municipality? So when you, and when Minister Bradell goes alongside one of the ministers that come here, doesn't happen very often. In the last 5 years, you can probably count on your one hand how many times those ministers actually came and involved themselves in those meetings. But when Minister Bradell goes there, he says explicitly, Minister, you can't chair this meeting. It must be chaired by the district mayor, not you. And that is the difference between the DDM model and the JDMA model. It is constitutional. And we must be constitutional, because that's how you hold it accountable. I would really like to see a report, a 5-year report on the DDM model and how it has made a massive change to failed governments across South Africa. Because I don't believe it has made a massive change. We don't see it. Because obviously if it did, if suddenly we were seeing clean audits in some municipality where a national minister was deployed, it would be very interesting. Because then we could say, okay, well, how do we change the constitution to allow this to happen? But it hasn't done that so far. And of course, we will remain constitutional. And we will continue to show this model and the different models. We will continue with that. Then, of course, I think the Honourable Member Mackenzie spoke about Dubai and Dubai, but you spoke about the Karoo and that we just don't give any support to the Karoo. And I would ask you, and I know that you're a new member, so you probably still haven't had a chance to look at it. You must go and have a look at our budget books, because it shows you exactly how much is spent, where it is spent, from which department it is spent. But if you look at the overall expenditure in this province, and it used to be the highest per capita spend, it is now number 3, because the Winelands have now got the highest per capita. But in the Winelands, the funding from this government going to the Winelands, it's 12,591 per capita. In number 2 is actually the Metro, which is 11,679. 11,243 per capita is actually what's spent in the Karoo. Lower than that is the Garden Route at 9,300, or the Vescus at 9,400. So it is not true what you say. It is not true. They get actually more than their fair share, because they need to. They need to. I must also say that when you speak about the energy plan, it is not true that the energy plan is only there for DA municipalities. The energy plan is a 5,700 megawatt plan for the Western Cape, the whole of the Western Cape. But you know, the challenge to the municipalities actually is when we have a project like small town. Which small town is going to be the first small town to have its own energy source to make sure that it is load shedding free? That was an open bidding process. We said to every municipality in this province, you are welcome to bid. Come with your ideas and we will go through the process and support the idea. We didn't get the bid. No bid. Nothing. No. Didn't happen. No, so you can't say that we don't support. We don't hand feed. We put out the challenge, take up the challenge. We also have a unit that is supporting municipalities to bring in their own energy. From the World Bank, to the EU Bank, to our department, to Treasury, to the Economic Development Department. How are we going to support, and of course the Energy Council, how do we support your municipality to enable you to become load shedding free, to have your own energy? And if ever there were municipalities that could do this, it would be the Karoo, because they have such good radiation numbers for sun. But of course, we did notice in the Karoo a big fanfare and a press release, and look at, this was part of Dubai, I think, look at all these solar panels, and it was amazing. And then of course a truck came a few weeks later and loaded up the solar panels and took them away, and now it's just bare desert. That kan nie wees. It's only a media stunt. We want real things. Then you will get real support in the Karoo. But I think that that will change now, want ek dink die kiesers het besluit anders vir die Karoo. Then the Honourable Marais, thank you very much. And again, I agree with you that GNU does bring hope for South Africa. Thank you. My second term in office. You spoke about disasters, You said we need to get a risk management task team in place, but we actually do have one. I would venture to say the best team on the African continent, and many of them were standing up there yesterday, because they are the ones that are there. Doesn't matter what it is. A collapse of a building in George, the floods in KZN, our own fires across this province, floods, you name it. Even in COVID-19, it was amazing to see how the disaster team actually was the team that stepped up and tried to hold everything together. It is critical. They play a critical role. But, of course, we can always invest more. And we are busy with the process now, as I said yesterday, to say, well, what is the next iteration of the disaster centre? Because it has to move because of the Tygerberg hospital rebuild. And so in that process, which we are busy planning for at the moment, how do you even then bring even the newer technology into being? And that, if you go and visit there, it'll be a good idea to go and have a look at the technology that's used for mitigating risk on floods. So we see how much rain is coming, and then it puts into the model, and then that's when they go and say, please, you must evacuate your house because it will be flooded tomorrow. And I remember in the September floods, we actually lost a life in the Vescus because the guy said, you must be mad, the sun's shining. And they said, no, you must evacuate today. And that very guy didn't evacuate, he refused to, and he is the very guy that drowned the next day, which is really sad. But we can probably take this even to the next level. I agree with you on devolution of power, and the Cabinet is busy having a look at the process that we are going to follow, and it's on police, rail, ports. I must actually say that in the election campaign, door to door, and specifically coastal communities, I am pretty convinced that we should actually add fishing to that devolution list as well. Because fishing is decided centrally, but it impacts provinces. And those provinces should have the say in it. And perhaps we will find an open door, because we actually have a minister now in that portfolio, which is really encouraging. The Honourable Bryant, thank you very much. Climate change, and I know that you are passionate about climate change. You've been driving this for many years, and thank you very much for your input. And specifically what you say, as we remove fossil fuels and start to push for the green energy economy specifically, but also how it opens up other economies. And it is critical. This province has been involved in that and seen it for quite a long time. I was personally the MEC for the economy many years ago when we launched Green Cape, which has now become a really unbelievable organization. And you set up these SPVs and you set up these boards to try to take an idea, an issue, or whatever it is, a sector forward. And you also say to them, we will fund you in the beginning, but you've got to become self-sustaining. And they've done exactly that. And I was absolutely amazed. I was last year at the EU, and I was at a meeting at the EU, and the next thing someone joined our meeting, and they said, I'm from Green Cape. And I went, wow, you come all the way from Cape Town? They said, no, I've got an office here in Europe now. So Green Cape have got offices in Europe, in the EU. That's the kind of expansion that we've had through there. But we've also obviously got the Green Special Economic Zone, specifically focusing on this green economy. But I think even more important is the border tax that's going to come in. And I think the crisis that we find ourselves in with an energy crisis, it's pushing the green agenda ahead of anybody else. And I think from an agricultural export point of view, that is going to be our big advantage, because other countries will not have got that far. We are forced to because of a crisis, and I think it's going to give us a competitive edge with our agricultural exports going forward. So that's another added extra in the economy. You also spoke about Jet IP, the transmission lines. That is really one space that needs a lot of investment, specifically in the Northern Cape, because the Northern Cape is really the province with all of the sun and solar capabilities. And of course, we're in partnership with the Northern Cape and the Eastern Cape on the Green Hydrogen Project, and of course with Namibia. And Minister Wenger, when she was holding that portfolio, made sure that we took that partnership of a corridor, not only within South Africa, but into Namibia, who on the green hydrogen front are actually doing amazing things. They really are pushing so many boundaries. Minister Simmers, thank you very much for your input. Making sure that the Western Cape is a construction site, roads, buildings, hospitals, schools, you name it, fixing flood damage rapidly. And it really is amazing because so many of those projects are done in-house with our yellow fleet, with our own capacity. And that's what gives us that quick response, because we don't have to go out to tender to actually fix that washed away road. We can actually get stuck in and do it immediately. So well done, and thank you very much for all that happens there. You spoke about the N1, and I spoke about the ducks swimming across the N1, and of course we just saw how that blocks our economy. And I don't know if people really know that, just that work of that retention pond and how to fix it, because it sits between us as the road authority, the city, PRASA. It's not all one easy space to go and sort out. And then, of course, it should have a drain, and the drain plan is not there, and you can't find the drain. And through the night, in the dark, in the rain, you've got teams in there busy looking for the drain. You find the drain, and the problem gets sorted out. So well done, and thank you for that. I spoke earlier about the Citrusdale, is it MR310? It's a critical road, and we've got to have long-term investment there. I've mentioned the 15 million that went in last Monday to try and remove some of the blockages, as well as the millions and millions that are being spent at the moment. And of course, you also spoke about rolling out, and I'm really glad to hear it, Conradis all over the place. And those foundations are just about to go in. I'm very happy about that. Honourable Member Lisa Kong, thank you very much for your inputs. You spoke about racism at school, and absolutely, I agree with you, and I spoke about that at the beginning of my input. I want to say that you had a lot to say about the lack of planning and the lack of infrastructure, and I just raise with you where you are in government. You must always think about yourself where you are in government, and you know where you're in government in this province, in Knysna, and let's talk about rubbish removal and services and sewage running through the streets in Hornley. Let's talk about water and dead bodies in the reservoir system, and of course, let's not talk about the stealing, the amount of money that's just disappeared. So you must remember that you're also in government, and you must be responsible for where you are in government. But I take the points that you've raised for us, because that's exactly what this House is about. I want to say to you that you've mentioned to me the road that you would like me to come and see. I think we also must speak to Minister Simmers to find out exactly if there is also something happening there immediately, or it is a plan for that road. But I will also endeavour to come with you to go and visit that road. Then the Honourable Brinkhuis. Thank you very much for your input. I think your words were 74%. Where is he? Yeah, man. Ay. I know, so he comes here, says 74% of households with a salary is laughable. He knows it's rubbish, and then he leaves. Well, in his absence, and for the benefit of this House, it's actually 74.6% of households in our province have a salary. By far the highest out of any province in South Africa. Of the households in our province, and this comes from Stats SA, it is the report on salaries, on grants, on income from businesses, on remittances and pensions per household across our whole country. The country average is 62.2. We are at 74.6 of jobs in, or salaries per household. Grants, we are 39.5. The average is 50.5 in South Africa. Income from a business, 14.8. In actual fact, in South Africa, that one's a bit higher at 16.2. Remittances at 4.1. whereas at 13.1 in South Africa, and at 6% on pensions, 3.9% as the average in South Africa. But there it is. That is the number of households already with a salaried earner. And obviously 74% means that there's 4.4% of citizens who don't have an income. And of course, that's what we've got to fix. You don't believe it? Please go and ask as a standing committee for Stats SA to come and talk to you. You got your number wrong on unemployment, but we'll deal with that just now. You also spoke about informal traders and red tape. Please, please, please. We have been doing red tape reduction for a long time, and we measure it in billions saved. But if you've got anybody have got red tape issues that people are faced, please put it in the system. And if it's not dealt with, let me know. Let the MEC know. Let's us make sure that we are reducing red tape to make it easier to do business. That's what we've got to do. The Honourable Christians, thank you very much for your input. Again, you raised the issue of racism in schools. You also said, I want to see the Western Cape as the first, or number one, when it comes to matric passes. Looking at the Minister, I'm absolutely sure that he wants to be number one as well. He's competitive. So, but at the same time, it's not about being number one at all costs, because that is where I think we fall flat. We cannot try to achieve number one, but then exit people in the system, because that gives us a better outcome. We've got to grow the number of learners in our system, the retention rate. I remember getting into government here 15 years ago, and that rate was 40%, our retention rate in matric. It is now 69.3%. It's not where it needs to be. It's getting better. I mean, we all know. You see kids that are dropping out of the system. That should not be happening. And so we've got to keep working. But I'm really proud that we're getting that number up, and of course focusing on it. But it's about getting those two things right, and they also have an effect. But I can't say anything now. I'll wait for the Minister. He's got a plan, and I said he's competitive, and I'm sure you will all welcome that plan when it gets tabled. Your issue about absentee teachers, absolutely, and vandalism, I mean, that's critical. Our school infrastructure can't get damaged year after year because we need to be putting new stuff in place, not replacing older stuff that's getting damaged, or in many cases, brand new stuff that's getting damaged. That's basically the whole of society approach and the responsibility that citizens have to have. Then let me get to the Honourable Heron. I know it's been a while since he's been in this house, but I notice he says a lot about jobs, and he says a lot about safety. But let me start on jobs. So, maybe I should do this one first, which is quite an interesting slide, seeing as a lot of people talk about, this province and opportunities specifically for previously disadvantaged. This was a study done by Minister Wenger when she was the MEC on the rate of increase of jobs for African citizens in the province. And here's the graph. And it doesn't only measure the Western Cape and the growth of African jobs in our province, it measures every province in South Africa. And so the growth of African jobs in the Free State is 25%. This is from 1996 to 2023. In the Northwest, it's 51%. In Mpumalanga, it's 99%. Then it goes to 112%. The national average, 124%. Let's look at Gauteng, 146%. 423% in the Western Cape. By far better than any other province. Because when jobs are created and jobs numbers grow, everything gets better. That's why the Gini coefficient comes down, and that's why people come out of poverty. That's why I focus on jobs in this province.
Order, members.
So then let's look at the actual numbers, Mr. Speaker.
Order, members.
Again, a graph.
Premier,
So
please
this
take your
is-
seat. Honorable Nkondlo, I understand that the debate is heating up, but can I please ask that you do not continue with your running commentary? It's been going on the entire debate. I've provided you an opportunity this morning through the parliamentary mechanisms. You did not use it or opted not to use it. You cannot now have your comments made in the reply. Honourable Premier, my apologies, you may continue.
Thank you very much, Speaker. And Speaker, through you, again, this is just a graph. This is jobs created in provinces 2018 quarter 2 to 2023 quarter 4. And it obviously doesn't, the next study will show the full term of the last term of office in this province. But so it basically measures 5 years up until quarter 4 2023. And the one thing that the Honourable Heron, the way he spoke, it's as if he didn't think that 2019 existed, or the world's economic slowdown around then, or the effect of energy shortfalls, and he didn't think that didn't even, it's as if it didn't even exist, and the impact that that's had on jobs and our economy. But it's quite
Premier,
it's quite
please take
interesting.
your seat. Honourable Petrus, is that a point of order?
Dankie Speaker. Die syfer wat die premier genoem
Oh, no. Honourable Petrus, would you like to pose a question to the Premier?
ek wil duidelik hê dat oor hy
Because you want to pose a question. And so in terms of the parliamentary rules, I will now ask the Premier. Premier, are you prepared to take a question? Die Premier is bereid om die vraag te aanvaar, so u kan die vraag stel.
Baie dankie Speaker, baie dankie premier. Ek dink daai syfer kom ek ja verander my bewoording. Ons moet baie seker maak dat daai syfer nie ongedokumenteerde arbeiders of werkers insluit.
Thank you very much, Honourable Petrus. That was more of a statement, but Premier, I'm not going to dictate how you're going to respond to that. If you so wish to respond before you continue.
So obviously this is a substantial document, and I will refer the member to it. It's a piece of research, and also Stats SA, and you can go and interrogate, because it will give you all of those answers. If I may carry on, thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much, Premier. Premier, please take your seat. Honourable Nkondlo, is that a point of order?
Can the Premier allow me to pose a question?
I will ask the Premier, please take your seat. Honourable Premier, are you prepared to take a question? Honourable Nkondlo, please pose your question.
Thank you, Speaker. I just want to check with the Premier. Is it a lie, Premier, that in your first SOPA address in the last Parliament, you promised a job in each household of the Western Cape? Is it a lie?
Thank you very much, Honourable Nkondlo. Premier, again, I'm not going to dictate how you respond to that question.
So I'm going to say, no, it's not a lie. It was actually in the manifesto. But it's not a lie, but even if, but let's say yes, and we are sitting at 74%, the highest in South Africa so far.
All right, thank you very much. Premier, before you go, members, I have allowed those questions because the parliamentary rules provide for it. I do not want to turn the debate, the reply, into a questions to the Premier session. You will have an opportunity for that too. So if there's any burning questions that you want to pose, please then use the rules. If not, let's allow the Premier to reply to those inputs made. Premier, you may continue.
Thank you very much. So just as a reminder to the House, I'm replying to the input from Honourable Member Heron, and he selectively uses 1 quarter as a statistic. But I'm going to give him the overall term statistic.
Honourable Premier, please take a seat. Honourable Heron, is that a point of order?
Yes, may I ask the Premier a question?
I will ask the Premier if he would, if you want to take a question.
No.
Honourable Premier, the Premier is not prepared to take a question. Honourable Premier, you may continue.
I'm actually replying
Honourable,
to the honourable member
Premier,
right now.
Honourable Premier, please take a seat. Honourable Heron, is that a new point of
It's a new
order?
point of order. Is the Premier going to mislead the House as to what I was quoting now?
That is not a point of order.
It is in terms of the Executive Members Ethics Act that he doesn't mislead the House.
Honourable Heron, if you're not happy with my ruling, that was not a point of order. There's mechanisms in place where you can challenge that ruling. Honourable Premier, you may continue.
Thank you very much. I promise you I'm not going to mislead the House. I'm going to give you the exact statistics. Exactly. So, this is the last 5
Order.
years. This is the last 5 years. And I think the prominent numbers to talk about is in the last 5 years, let's talk about the Gauteng jobs numbers. And in actual fact, in 5 years, they went down by 10,167 jobs. So there were 10,167 jobs less in quarter 4 2023 than there were in quarter 2 2018. The best performer outside of the Western Cape is actually KwaZulu-Natal, and they had 245,000 jobs over that 5-year period. In this province, we are 589,000 jobs up over that term or that period. And as you can see, by far the best performing province in South Africa. And that's actual jobs. That's not taking into account the size of the economy, etc., because that's why I referred to Gauteng. Gauteng should be the engine room of our economy in South Africa. It should be 35% of our economy, and it is not able to do what it needs to do. And I suppose we should ask the question, why? But I won't get into that right now. I now want to move to the Honourable Heron and what he has to say about the safety plan. He says, basically, the safety plan has failed. Now, the safety plan has an apex goal of halving the murder rate, and whether we get there or not, I don't know. And remember that this is a pilot project. Yeah, of course, we've got another 5 years to go. This is a pilot project because we cannot take over policing in this province. We're not able to. We're not able to. I noticed that the Premier of Gauteng tried to copy some of the safety plan, although he did make a mistake and he tried to put it in the province. Now, you can't put law enforcement officers as provincial employees. And I noticed in his budget yesterday, he actually decreased the budget by 300 million, specifically for that purpose, because I wondered how they actually made that budget available. Now, what we use is the legislation that enables municipalities to have law enforcement officers. And what we did is we asked the Minister of Justice permission to give law enforcement officers peace officer status. And bear in mind, this is a pilot project because we are seriously concerned by 4,000 murders in this province every year. We are seriously concerned.
Order,
that
members.
the police-
Honourable Nkondlo and Honourable Premier, please take a seat. Honourable Nkondlo and Chief Whip of the Opposition, I want to remind you or draw your attention to Rule 39 of our standing rules. Can I please ask that you allow the Premier to respond? The Premier is responding to a member that made an input today. I think it's only fair and respectful to allow the Premier to respond to that member, because that member obviously raised it because they wanted or expects a reply. So that reply is now happening. So please allow the Premier to continue.
So it is a serious issue. Our children are getting shot in gang warfare. It is terrible. And the constitutional mandate for fighting that kind of crime is the South African Police Services. But they are not able to do it. It gets worse every single year. The crime levels go up. They get worse. The Honourable Member Heron said, murder gets worse. Yes, it gets worse. It's unacceptable. It needs to change. We need a different model. We need to try something else. We are doing that in this province with a safety plan. We are trying something else. And the interesting thing
Honourable
is just
Premier,
said, it
Honourable
is
Premier,
not working.
Honourable Premier, my apologies. Honourable Member, is that a point of order? No, I've already ruled on that. You'll have an opportunity to pose questions to the Premier without notice as part of the parliamentary sessions and the parliamentary program going forward. So I'm not going to allow any further questions to the Premier in his reply. Premier, you may continue.
I just heard the interjection from the honourable member to say, it is not working. 5 years ago, when we put this plan in place, we were the murder capital of South Africa. More murders per 100,000 in this province than anywhere else in our country. We are not. We are not. So I'm going to say to these honourable members, go and have a look at the SAPS crime statistics, and you will see the change per capita murder rate in 4 provinces with the highest murder rates over 2 consecutive periods. Go and have a look at it. Honourable Speaker, I've just been accused of lying to the House by an honourable member. Would you please point out to him that that is unparliamentary?
Honourable Premier, can you please, on a point of order, can we just get it for the record? So who accused you of lying? Honourable Jacobs. Honourable Jacobs, did you refer to the Premier or any other member in the House as a liar?
No, he said lying to them.
Or lying?
I'm sorry, maybe I used the wrong word, but the Premier is misleading this House.
No, okay. All right, no, let's first deal with the that's on Hansard, and for the record, did you refer or did you say that the Premier is lying?
Yes, I said the Premier is lying.
Okay. And can you, when I address you, can you please stand, Honourable Member? So that is unparliamentary. Can I please ask that you withdraw that statement?
I withdraw the statement of lying, but he's misleading the House.
Thank you very much. The statement is withdrawn. You can't withdraw with a proviso. Can you please withdraw the statement?
I withdraw the statement.
Thank you very much. Premier, you may continue.
Thank you very much. And I also heard, Mr. Speaker, that 2 members in the opposition benches, the Honourable Kondla and the Honourable Jacobs, said that I'm misleading the House. And of course, there are processes, and I welcome them putting forward a motion that I'm misleading the House, show how I'm misleading the House, that we can actually have a proper investigation as to how I am misleading the House. I look forward to that. But let me get back to the report that I'm quoting from that uses SAPS crime statistics, and it measures actually 6 years prior to the beginning of last term, and it measures the last 5 years. And it measures the Eastern Cape, it measures Gauteng, it measures KwaZulu-Natal, and it measures the Western Cape in murders per 100,000. In the Eastern Cape, murders per 100,000, the previous 6 years and last term went up. In Gauteng, murders per 100,000 went up threefold. In KwaZulu-Natal, doubled. In the Western Cape, the only province in South Africa where it came down, and now it's in negative territory. So sure, when you talk about this and you talk to citizens to say there's a reduction of 27% in murders in Kraaifontein or 9% in Langa, and there was a murder yesterday on the street, it does not feel like it. Because 4,000 murders is 4,000 murders too much. But what this says to me is something's happening here. Something is happening. And this needs interrogation. Why is this happening? What is going on here? And let's go and interrogate it. Like Minister Mchunu is now saying, let's have a discussion. Because that was one of the projects within the safety plan. For the Honourable Member Heron's benefit, I would also like to refer to the safety plan and how it is reflected by not us, not the provincial government, but how it is reflected upon specifically by the Institute for Security Studies. It is reflected on by the Hans Seidel Foundation. It is reflected on by UCT, by Stadio, by the Staatskanselij van Beiersicht, It is reflected on by the Center of Criminology. And each of these publications, and I would ask the Honourable Heron, because he says this over and over again about the safety plan, where the statistics are opposite to what he says, I would encourage him to go and have a look at these, to go and read these documents. Evidenced policing for South Africa. And it's based on the safety plan and what is happening here. How to map violence without police data. Because we don't use police data in our safety plan. We use health data from the health department. I would encourage the Honourable Heron to go to the new pathology lab that's just been built by the Department of Infrastructure at Groote Schuur Hospital, where we are using the latest technology, the latest innovations, the latest stuff that our pathologists have gone and searched for all around the world, and we've invested here, the top one on the African continent. I would suggest that he goes there and just has a look, speaks to them as how they take that data and they feed it in to the LEAP officers and the deployment of the LEAP officers. How also South African police services come there, how they've created the space with the technology, the TV screens and the computer screens, that the investigating officer can actually be present when the autopsy is happening, while that is happening, so that they can feed to that investigating officer while that is happening. But also go and have a look at how just the caring component of that investment, where before you wanted to go and view your loved one, you would go to the morgue. Now when you go, you get taken to a separate entrance, you get offered psychosocial support, you go into a specific room identified for yourself, someone helps you there, you go to do body identification, they lower the dim the lights on this side, they up the lights on the other side, they've then got a reflection garden for you to spend some time in. It really is amazing to see the thought that's gone into it. But the reason here is it's about the health data, the violence Hector system that measures data in our hospitals. I would encourage him to go on a Saturday night or a Friday night to Mitchell's Plain Hospital and go and see how often the doctors have to push that alarm, where you've got to stop looking after the heart attack patient, where you've got to stop looking after somebody else's mom who's just been brought in with whatever the problem is because another shooting victim, another stab victim has been brought in, and you've got to save that person's life immediately. That data is the data that we use, the data of where the ambulance collects that person who's been shot. It GIS maps it. That is the data, and that's what they're writing about in this safety plan. Go and have a look at hotspot policing for murder and robbery, Cape Town case study. There it is. Not us. Universities and international markets interested in what is happening here on the safety plan. I want to also say that I'm really looking forward to Safety Plan 2.0, because that's the next stage. We've got to learn from it all the time. And I notice the Honourable Heron's comments on the safety plan time and time again. I would ask that he, smart guy, come on, don't just rip the thing to pieces. Put some extra ideas on the table. Come and help us bring this horrendous scourge of murder in our province down. We are putting extra energy beyond our constitutional mandate in this province into finding ways of bringing murder down. And we will work day and night because we need to make sure that we get a change in policing and the policing system. But then go and have a look at the work that we do according to our constitutional mandate. The Western Cape Policing Needs and Priorities Report. It is an outstanding document that goes and has a look at every single one of our police stations. What is needed, what lacks, what works well, what extra support they should get. Quite frankly, our police officers are not getting the support that they need. And then perhaps lastly, Mr. Speaker, to the Honourable Heron, he speaks about the budget. And of course, if we have to make a plan of doing something outside of our constitutional mandate, we would not get funding for it. We would have to bring the funding together for it. It doesn't take rocket science to work out that if you want to take R1 billion and put it towards a safety plan, that basically, because 80% of our budget goes to health and education, 80% of that budget would come from health and education. But the interesting thing would be right now, and of course this is less than 1% of the budget over that period, less than 1%. But I guarantee you that just on the burden of disease report that the health department puts out and the measurement of trauma, for every gun that you remove off the street, you have less chance of a shooting victim in our hospital. Every single time that a LEAP officer stops a stabbing, we don't have to deal with that case in our hospital. And that saving would be far in excess of the 1 billion rand over the 3-year period. But of course, we can have that debate too. I don't mind making tough decisions and trying different things to bring about change. Because quite frankly, 4,000 people in our province murdered every single year is totally unacceptable. And I actually would like this whole house to say that we need a change in policing. We owe it to our citizens to show that we are going to come up with different ideas, that we are going to come up with different ways of approaching safety in our province. We have to make sure that we end the scourge. It cannot get worse year after year in our country. And it cannot get worse year after year in this province. So I really would welcome not just objections, complaints, and it doesn't work. Give me another idea. Come on. Let's put some other policy idea on the table. I'm very happy to try it. Then to the Honourable Windvogel, thank you very much. You started off by talking about votes and how political parties are voted for, and you referenced what I spoke about yesterday, specifically concerning to me that 4 out of 10 registered voters actually voted in South Africa. But not in this province. Here it's 6 out of 10. So the voters in this province are far more engaged. I think it should be more than 6 out of 10, but it's 6 out of 10 and not 4 out of 10. So already that is a better number. But that's what I said yesterday. I said it's up to all of us. It's how we work in this space, how we try to build trust, that we are really trying to take on the very difficult things that our citizens face. As the Honourable Said said, how do we reduce informal settlements? Let's get that right. How do we reduce murder? What are the big issues that face our citizens? And let's make sure that we get that right. I also want to say that I would look forward to her helping us with calling for fair budgets. We need to make sure we call for fair budgets in South Africa. And whether it's the governing party or an opposition party, we should all be at one for this, because this is budgets that go to serving citizens in this province. And I would really hope that this House together fights for more money. She did mention J.P. Smith. Of course, he's not in this House. But again, we have got to make sure that we deal with illegality. Whether it's an illegal taxi or it is a criminal that's extorting money from a person trying to earn a living, or whether it is a gangster, we've got to make sure that we have the rule of law here in our province and in our country. And we've got to work hard to make sure that this, and get stronger. I mean, the criminals get away with far too much in our country. The Honourable Kaiser Philander, thank you very much for your input. Specifically, again, speaking about swims, and you spoke about our social workers, and I thought I just want to spend 1 or 2 minutes on that. I mean, this app is really there to help our social workers become more efficient, to offer better services to our citizens, and that's really exciting. But you know, I was at, you call it the White House in Langa, at the Social Development Office there. What a beautiful office. I mean, Minister, you've just rebuilt that office from infrastructure. What a beautiful office. Really an amazing facility. But the Honourable Philander spoke about the hijackings that our social workers face. I mean, that is just horrendous. I don't understand how in our society, a social worker with a vehicle that says the Social Development Department is on its way to go and give some psychosocial support to a rape victim, and that car gets hijacked. And those social workers get robbed and abused. How does that happen? Same thing with our ambulance drivers, or come on. And that comes back to civil society and citizen responsibility as well as policing, etc. We've all got to work harder at that. It is not acceptable that our social workers have to face that kind of criminality and really fear. I mean, they have to then have their own psychosocial support because they've just been robbed at gunpoint. It is unacceptable. Our criminals are just getting away with too much, and we have to make sure that we deal with that specifically. You spoke about safe spaces. Absolutely agree with you. I mentioned earlier how we and across the province, but also in the city, more safe spaces being invested in. And not only safe spaces, as in homeless safe spaces, but in also GBV shelters across the province that the Department of DSD invests in. And then the support that is given. That is also quite critical, that we enable as many people to get back on their feet as possible. And then lastly, I started off this debate, or this reply to this debate, by referring to the Honourable Mackenzie. I want to say thank you again, Honourable Mackenzie, first of all, for making us super proud when you went off on behalf of... No, this is the main Mackenzie, the real Mackenzie. This is the real McCoy. This is the real McCoy.
Order.
I want to thank you very much for going
Order.
for going to fetch, going to, well, first of all, being part of that process, and then getting that award and that recognition. And as you said, it is just a part of what's happening here, because of course we haven't even gone through the process of application to include the Klipdrift caves, which are off the Hoop, which even more stuff is coming out of. The exciting stuff for me is about the origins of man. And you know, it's very interesting when you go to the museum in De Hoop and you see the work that's happening there with the scientists from all around the world, and they talk about the origins of man. And South Africa is always quite proud of Mrs. Pless, and quite proud of you know, first signs of man in Gauteng and the Stakfontein caves, and linked to what happens in other parts of Africa that goes back, you know, 300, 400,000 years. But the work that's happening in the caves here, in the caves in Mossel Bay, but also down in the caves in De Hoop, is actually starting to show the history and the documents of modernization of man in Europe up. So they always have said that man modernized from Mrs. Pless, humanoid, to a more modern man with language, with community, with art, with communication and leaving records. That man modernized about 30 to 40,000 years ago, and they always said it was in the French region, somewhere around about France. Well, what's happening in these caves is news for Europe, absolutely news for Europe, because they said man modernized about 30,000 years ago. Well, man actually modernized here 130,000 years ago, 100,000 years before that. And that's where that's where it first started, in those caves. So I say to all members, please make a trip to the museum and go and have a look at the work that's happening in these caves. That's showing that this is where we learned to communicate, where language started, where modernization of man started, where we learned to hunt with weapons, where bows and arrows started. They started here, not in Europe, where language started, where we could leave messages for another family that would come along to a cave a year later, or 5 years later, or 130,000 years later. And that all happened here, and it's really exciting. And of course, the project that the Minister spoke about, which is something that I got excited way back then, when I was the MEC of the economy, and understanding the tourism potential. So with this work that's happening, I cannot wait for the big sign at our airport that says to anybody and everybody who comes from anywhere in the world, welcome home, because this is actually where it all began, and this is actually where you come from. Thank you very much, Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Premier. Honourable members, that concludes the debate on the Premier's opening address. Members and guests are requested to remain standing in their places while the procession leaves the chamber. Members or guests must please remain seated while the members leave the chamber. Honourable members, that concludes the business for the day, and the House is now adjourned.